Thank you, Zoom. So yesterday, me and Alistair jumped on a train and we went down to London to the first in-person lead meeting this year, but also happened to be our last lead meeting as we come to the end of our course. It was great. It was surreal. There was about 100 odd people there. So I was reflecting while I was there that probably, yeah. I was reflecting while we were there that probably been over a year and a half since I've been in a crowd of that many people, and so there was something that felt quite surreal about that, but also something that felt really good about that as well. We had a great day. We had a lot of teaching from Steph Liston, and we've drawn out a few points between us on our train journey home yesterday and last night that we just wanted to share with you. It was a pretty intense day, as it usually is. Epic download of knowledge. But we had a really good time. We were talking about a very interesting subject, which was Christian leaders in a post-Christian culture or society. It was really interesting, and probably a good thing to just define exactly what that meant. And so Steph explained that there's a difference between a non-Christian culture and a post-Christian culture, and in some ways, although it may be a lot tougher to live in a non-Christian culture, especially if it was, for example, a Muslim culture or another religious culture, you also kind of know where you are. If it's a non-Christian culture, it's very non-Christian. It has some focus in some other area, be it secular or another religion. However, we live in a post-Christian culture, so that's a culture that has, over the years, our society over the years has been shaped by Christianity. We've had good Christian values and good Christian morals in this society. We've had laws based on biblical principles, but over the last number of decades, that has slowly been changing, and that actually makes things quite tricky for us as Christians in this society, because there's a lot of blurred lines now. There's a lot of things that have happened that take away some of our values, and we can sometimes find ourselves, and Christians have found themselves, perhaps trying to give a little bit to fit into the society still. But actually, to be a Christian is to be a follower of Jesus, a follower of God, and the gospel is countercultural. It's completely countercultural. But the main thing that we were looking at over yesterday was how the glasses that we wear, as it were. So I don't wear glasses, but I'm reliably informed that if you wear glasses, it doesn't take very long for you to realise that you're not wearing. You don't realise that you're wearing glasses because they're there all the time and you're always looking through them. And Steph was saying, well, actually, it's a bit like that in our culture today, in that sometimes we can look at things through the glasses of our culture and not realise sometimes that our perspective has been changed or been altered by that lens that we're looking through. And he was talking about how important it is to take a step back, and how important it is for us to always be consulting the Bible, always to be communicating with the Spirit and consulting our conscience. And one of the things that he said yesterday, which really stuck with me, is that we should never, ever make a decision out of fear, but always make our decisions out of decisiveness. And if you're going to make a decision out of decisiveness, that implies that you have to have actually thought about it. You have to, as Christians, have actually prayed about it. You have to actually really consider it before you decide what you're going to say or what you're going to do in a certain situation. There were three main strands or cultural identities that we particularly looked at, and then looked at how that worked within various aspects. So God and those aspects, the family, self, and authority. Obviously, we don't have time to go into all of that, so I'll give a brief overview of the three different strands, and then I've got some points to make. Alice has got some points to bring, and then I'll finish up with a last point on the last strand. So the three strands, and you'll have to, one of these is quite funny, the name. So the first strand we looked at was secular humanism, which is that everything is about humans. It's all about self, it's all about us, and of course our culture is just full of that today. Social media is rife with it. Everyone, you've got to be your best version of yourself. The second one, and this is I've got to say this right, psychotherapeutic self-actualization, which again is even more of that self, and that everything being all about me and not about anybody else, not considering anybody else. And the last one was New Age spirituality, and there's a lot of that. There's a lot of Eastern culture, a lot of Eastern spirituality that's been coming through. You go to a garden centre, go to any garden centre in this country, and I'll guarantee you'll find statues of Buddha to put in your garden. So, one of the things we looked at in looking at self-humanism is if the church is only about feelings, it won't meaningfully impact lives. We had this really good discussion about whether or not you need to believe before you can then belong in a church, or whether you should belong in the church before you then come to believe. It was a very interesting discussion, and there was, as you can imagine, a lot of different views on both sides. It was really quite interesting just thinking that through. This was something we actually did as a group discussion, and it was really interesting trying to think that through. And a really helpful analogy that Steph gave was, he said that it's an oversimplification, I will say that, but two types of churches. You either are a coconut or you're a peach. So a coconut is really hard on the outside. It's really hard to get into that church. You've really got to believe in God before you get in. But then once you get inside, it's soft on the inside. There's the love of God there. But a peach is so soft and squishy. It's so easy to feel loved and feel warm and fuzzy in that church. But if you've been there long enough, or you dig down deep enough, you find that hard core in the middle. Basically, to cut a long story short, after all the debating and everything, we kind of really came to a place where it's kind of got to be both. And of course, the best thing to do is to, of course, look to Christ. And what did Christ do? Well, Christ met people where they were at. He fed the 5,000. He healed people. He came and he ministered to people. He looked after people. He loved people. And that's what we need to do as Christians. We need to love people. We need to provide for people. But he never shied away from hitting them with hard truths. He loved them, but he also wanted to know where their heart was. And made me think, as I was looking over my notes last night and just planning this morning, it made me think about the young man that comes to Jesus, and the rich young man, and he comes to Jesus and he asks what he needs to do to follow Jesus. And Jesus loves him, but he also tells him flat out what he needs to do to follow Jesus. And the young man can't do it. He can't give up his money. He can't, and he doesn't follow Jesus. He turns away and he's sad. And the really important thing about that story is that when the young man then decides he can't give it up and he's gonna keep his money and keep his power, that really was his idol. That was the thing that he wanted more than anything else. And Jesus told him, well, if you want that more than anything else, then you can't have me. You need me more than anything else. But the really important thing was when the young man decided that's what he wanted, Jesus didn't then go, oh, no, wait. He didn't try and lower the bar and make it more acceptable and more palatable for the young man. He wasn't afraid of hurting the young man's feelings or the young man being excluded from the club. He told it straight. The young man turned away. And it's really important as a church, us as a church, but also churches in this country. We can't water down the message of the gospel. Yes, we've got to love people. We've got to love people. We've got to be kind. We shouldn't be quarrelsome. We shouldn't be argumentative. But we've still got to hold true to our values. And there are many ways in which we can love people. We're only a little church. Big churches do all sorts of outreach programs. They'll feed the homeless and things like that. And, you know, it'll be great if we can do things like that as the church hopefully grows in the coming years. But we can still love our neighbours. We can still love our friends and our family. We're going to go out on the streets on Thursday, some of us, and just go out and chat to people and just see how they are and offer to pray for them. We can still love people, but we must never hide the gospel from people. And one of the things that was reflected on yesterday was how actually that can be quite dangerous in itself, because if people were invited into a church, but God's kind of never mentioned really, is kind of on the peripheral, and the gospel's never really preached, those people could feel like they've become part of a family, part of a community, feel like they're loved, feel like this is amazing, what a place to be. And then all of a sudden they find the gospel and they find out, well, actually you can't really stay here anymore unless you believe in God. And that can do so much more damage than that person coming in to a church for the first time, finding love, finding acceptance, but also finding there's a cost. There's a cost following Christ. At least they know up front. As Christians, we can't be the hidden small print. We've got to be upfront about the gospel. We've got to be upfront about what Jesus wants from us and what Jesus did for us. But we can't do that in a brash way. We can't do that in a way that would upset people. It might upset people in that they can't handle it, like the young ruler couldn't handle it. But we can't do it in a way where we're shouting at people or we're really attacking people. The gospel shouldn't be used in that sort of a way. We've got to be loving people. We've got to be showing people love. We've got to be outreaching to people, but at the same time sticking true to that gospel message. But that really came through yesterday, and it was such an interesting discussion, just talking about believing or belonging, or belonging or believing. And you kind of need both. You need people in a church that believe in God, but people need to belong. And I've talked before about how church is family, and church is family, and church needs to be family. That's how church works. We are a family. We're the family of God. We're brothers and sisters in Christ. But when people come into our church, they need to feel that love as well. They need to feel that they can come in and be a part of this family. But they need to know that there's a cost to that as well. Well, that's the end of my point, so I'll hand over to Alistair. The rain, it keeps coming. Do you want to move inside, or are you happy hiding under umbrellas? We can move inside if you'd like. We could take the chairs through.
I volunteered this morning to cover the psychotherapeutic self-actualization. Yeah, so yeah, psychotherapeutic self-actualization. So I think I've kind of drawn the short straw, but that's okay. But these three strands that Justin has mentioned, that these are this is the soundtrack, this is the narrative of our culture at the moment. It's something we're not necessarily conscious of it, but there's always we're always subconsciously listening to a soundtrack. We're always subconsciously listening to a narrative, and we need to be aware. It's important that we're aware that there is a narrative in the background, and it's important that we're discerning of it. It's important that we understand what it's saying to us, for a number of reasons. I think first of all, from an outreach point of view, it's important and it's valuable to understand what people's worldview is. As Justin says, you know, we all wear spectacles. I mean, I wear physical spectacles. Other people wear sort of mental spectacles, as it were. But the spectacles are like a worldview, and the worldview it's how you it's how you look at the world. It's how you think about God and yourself and family and creation, and it's the underlying thoughts and the assumptions that you have about those big issues. So it's really important for us from an outreach point of view to be aware of people that don't know Christ. It's important for us to understand what their worldview is, so that we can engage with them and so that we can challenge them. Because I think if you unpack the worldview of the world, there are some implicit contradictions in it. So, for instance, one of the thing that Justin mentioned about secular humanism. Now, one of the main premises of secular humanism is the scientific theory of evolution, which is, now I'm being very simplistic here, but evolution is premised on survival of the fittest. Survival of the fittest. There's an implicit contradiction there, because a person of the world might say, well, yes, I believe that we just evolved, and that that it's all about survival of the fittest. But then, if you believe that as a society, we care for the elderly, we care for the we provide for those living with disabilities. So there's kind of an implicit contradiction there. So okay, you believe in you believe that basically you believe in evolution, which is premised on survival of the fittest, but then you think it's important as a society that we care for the elderly, that we care for the weak. So there's kind of a contradiction there, and so understanding people's worldviews and understanding the premises behind them can be a way of sort of teasing out some of the contradictions and just sort of challenging people about them. So if you didn't quite get that first time, come and chat with me afterwards, and I'll unpack that for you a little bit more. But the one I'm going to talk about mainly is say it with me: psychotherapeutic self-actualization. Yeah. Now, what's that all about? Self-actualization. It's a psychological concept that's been it was made popular by writers such as Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow. But effectively, self-actualization, it's the process of achieving your full potential as an individual. So self-actualization, it's achieving your full potential as an individual. So as you can see, so it's essentially it's a it's a sort of self-centered thing. Now, those of you that maybe work in the business world, have you come across Maslow's hierarchy of you've come across the Maslow's. Okay. Anyone else come across? Yeah, and it's so that's the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That's a sort of it's a pyramid of needs, and so the lowest level is your base needs, so sort of food and shelter, and that like you are there. But that's Maslow's pyramid of needs, and self-actualization. It's something that's it's around us in our culture. So you go into any bookshop or go onto YouTube, and you'll see loads of videos, loads of books on self-help. How to succeed in management, how to succeed in this and that. Our folk religion, our horoscopes. What do the stars mean for you? Sort of how do the stars guide you to absolutely to lead a happy, fulfilling life. It's also self-actualization. You've maybe not heard of it until now, but it is something that's pervasive. It's something that's in our culture, and at its heart, it's about self-worship. It's a cult of self-worship. So as believers, we need to be aware that this is something that's in our culture, and we need to be on our guard that this kind of secular worldview doesn't creep into our doesn't affect our thinking as believers. There's a few particular ways in which I think we do need to be on our guard, and the first one is our biblical view of the family. We were celebrating a family this morning. We were just rejoicing, weren't we, that how good it is that when we have opportunities to gather as family. You may have picked up in the news a few weeks ago that Bill and Melinda Gates. So Bill Gates, the founder, was it Microsoft or?
Yes.
Yeah, but Bill Gates, the founder of the Microsoft Corporation, him and his wife Melissa have recently agreed to. I'm not sure if it's divorce or I think it's they're going through a divorce, and the the public reasons they've cited it is that sort of being married is stopping them from growing as individuals. So them being married, them being joined as a married couple.
Well, it's supposed to. That's supposed to cause you to grow together, isn't it?
Well, absolutely, yes, yeah.
Marriage is for.
Marriage is, yeah, marriage is. I mean, I'm married, so I know. Marriage is meant to cause you to grow together as married couples, not to grow as individuals. So, I mean, that's we're not all Bill Gates. It's kind, so I mean, it's kind of a. But that's an example there of this this worldview of you know, the sort of self-actualization. You know, it's you know, this view that in family. I mean, we see so much tragic family breakdown these days, and I think at the root of a lot of it is this view that well, I'm in this relationship. What's in this relationship for me? I mean, please hear me right, friends. I'm in no way being I'm in no way being judgmental, but there is this this view. What's in this relationship for me? And if I'm not getting if I as an individual not being fulfilled from this relationship, I'm not willing to commit to it and work through it through the hard times. So so family life is an area that is threatened by this worldview. The second area that is threatened is our biblical view of God. Yeah? Now, as believers, we believe that God is a God of love. You know, God loved the world so much that he sent his son, that whoever might believe in him shall not perish but have eternal life. And yes, God is a God of love, but the Bible teaches us that God is a God of wrath as well. You read through the book of Romans, for instance, and that there is much there about the wrath of God against the sin of mankind. So God is a God of love, but he is a God of wrath as well. Now, God's wrath is actually good news, in that if God who created the universe, God who created 1,000 billion galaxies, if he didn't care about this beautiful world that he created, if he didn't care about it, then he would be indifferent to it. But the fact that God is wrathful against sin, the fact that God is wrathful against rebellion against him, that's good news, because that shows that God cares. God cares about what he's created. Now, why am I saying this? A sort of a self-actualization worldview tends to make me as the center of my life, and it would tend to have a view that, well, God is a God of love. God would never rebuke me. God would never discipline me. You know, God is about meeting my needs. So. And that's not a correct. That's not a well-rounded view of God, because God does discipline us in love. God is wrathful against sin, and he's provided salvation through his son. So we need to guard against that. And then thirdly, a self-actualization point of view, it can produce a me-centered gospel. Now. What did I do with my book? Did I lend my book? I've left. I've lost my Bible, but I think a passage that many of you will be familiar with. So Ephesians chapter 1, where it's okay. I'll do it from memory. But Ephesians chapter 1, where God talks about all the blessings that he's poured out upon us. You know, that he's loved us and he's saved us and that he's chosen us and he's foreknown us. That passage ends that God has done it. God has saved us, and God has brought his gospel to us for his glory. There, so God blessing us, God saving us. It's all about it's all to the praise and the glory of him. So we always need to be careful that when the gospel that we hold to and the gospel that we preach, that it's not a man-centered gospel, that it's not a gospel all about meeting my needs, but that it's it's a God-centered gospel, that God has saved me, God has redeemed me, God is bringing me to glory for his glory. Yeah? So thank you for listening. I shall now hand back to Justin, and I think you're going to talk on New Age spirituality. Yeah?
I am, yes. So yeah, the final kind of lens that we looked at that is quite prevalent in society today, as I said, was this idea of spirituality, and a lot of that's coming from the East. And again, there's a lot of self in this worldview, in this kind of attitude. It's all about me. It's well, everybody's on their own journey. But another thing that comes through with this kind of self-spiritualism, as it were, is this, well, who can really know the truth? Or, well, make your own truth. And it lacks accountability. That's the biggest problem with that. But one of the things that, for me, that really stuck yesterday as we were looking at this was a real big positive that Steph brought out. And that was that actually, unlike the other two, one of the benefits for us as Christians to people exploring spirituality in that way is it actually brings them a lot closer to us, because with both of the other two worldviews, they're very much denying God at all, whereas with this spiritualism, people are at least admitting there's some sort of force, or there's some sort of God, or there's something, and actually that does bring them a bit close to us. And really the real encouragement that Steph had in that was that this is why, as Christians, we need to be moving in the gifts of the Spirit. Because if we can show people real power, the power of God, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for this spiritualism. They're looking for something in their life to fulfill them. And if they can come to a church, or we can meet them on the street and we can pray for healing for them, or we can prophesy over them, then actually that can bridge the gap. And as I say, sometimes those people with that kind of a mindset that are pursuing spirituality, they're actually a lot closer to God than others in our society are, who are completely denying any idea of God, or any idea of authority, or any idea of spiritualization. And so that was a great encouragement to me, really, that out of these three kind of real big lenses that are in our society today, actually there's one of them that we can really kind of use to our advantage. Really, if we come across somebody like that, we can really kind of try and show them, well, you know, you're kind of right, there is spiritualization. And one of the examples he used was speaking about Peter, and so it's knowing your audience, really, and how Peter spoke in the synagogue, and he kept bringing out the Old Testament because he knew the Jews knew what he was talking about. But when he then later spoke to a lot of Greeks, he didn't mention the Old Testament once, but he started with, you're a spiritual people. He talked about the fact that they did worship different gods, and he particularly pointed out that as a society they were worshipping an unknown god. They were so keen to make sure they worshipped every single god that they even had an altar to whatever gods they'd forgotten or they didn't know about. And he actually he doesn't start off attacking them and telling them that they're wrong and telling them that no, it's just one God. He actually starts off by commending them and telling them, what, you know, you're on the right track here. And he goes in with love, and he commends them for their spirituality, for the fact that they're pursuing something. And then he comes in with the truth afterwards, and he tells them, look, it's God. There's one true God. There's the Trinity. And for me, I just found that so encouraging that, yeah, you know, we have a lot of people in our society that completely disagree with us. We have got a lot of people in our society that don't want to listen to us, that think that we're a dying breed, perhaps, that we're, oh, that nonsense, superstitious stuff. But despite all of that, and despite those attacks, we just got to come back with love. And the fact that of those three big groups, one of those groups is actually, not that they realise it, but much closer to God than they realise. And we can bring them in. We can commend them for pursuing something. We can commend them for the fact that they're acknowledging that there is something else out there, and then we can hopefully help to push them towards that and show them the truth of God. And so, yeah, that was just a great encouragement. And I wanted to, I mean, it was the third one on the list anyway, but I wanted to finish with that because I thought it would be good to finish with an encouragement for us all. But I'd just like to say as well, as I close, that I've had an amazing 2 years on the lead course. It's a really well-designed course. So you get an epic download of theology. We've gone through the whole of the Old Testament and the New Testament. I mean, and I thought I had a fairly good handle. Not arrogantly, but Dad, as many of you know, went to Bible college, and my dad's biblical knowledge is on point, and I've grown up with that in my life, and I've been in churches in my life that have had a good respect for the scriptures, and so I felt I had a fairly good handle on the Bible, and yet I've learnt so much these last 2 years to add to that. But I think the thing for me that's the most important is that they're so keen on working on your heart in this course. They're so keen on you coming out the other end of the lead course with a better relationship with God, and that's definitely happened for me. I definitely feel closer to God. I feel after 2 years being on this lead course that I've learned so much, and it's drawn me in so much closer to God. And I'm really excited that Christian joined us this year, and he's got another year to go, and super excited that Sharon and Pauline have decided to go on the course as well. And I can't recommend the course enough, and it's not too late to sign up if you want to for September, but the course runs every year anyway. It starts up every year. It is a big time commitment, and I think that's probably the biggest struggle I've had this last 2 years, and particularly the last kind of 6-7 months with all the extra responsibilities here at King's Church. As I've walked into leadership, that time commitment has been very hard. It's a lot of studying, it's a lot of reading, but it's a really well crafted course, and if nothing else, it's changed me for the better. Right, well, let's have communion together as a